Hello and welcome to another episode of the World Class Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark Worrell. I'm joined as ever by Mr. Ian Macbeth. How are you, pal?
I'm good. Good. I'm hobbling a little after a big leg session yesterday with my PT. So fortunately, you don't see me moving because I'm not moving so well today. Decided to play seven-a-side football last night as well, straight afterwards. But other than that, yeah, can't believe it's already the 14th of January at the point of recording this. It'll be the 15th of it going out. So, 2 weeks into 2025 already. How are you?
Yeah, good. It's flying. We had a good start to the year. People ask me numerous times, like, what's the market? I know you get the question a lot. It feels like I've had it an awful lot in the last week, and I'm like, well, it is a little bit early to say, but we have started pretty well. The sheet that we used to record sort of performance in the office there, that was full last week, which is always a really good start. Loads of valuations being booked, a couple of sales, completion on there as well. So yeah, it's started really well. And I know January is always that time where you think, right, let's get on and get some valuations. And I've started thinking about the year for some of our discussions in a very pragmatic way that I know, as you said, profit will come in Q4. So this time of year is about listing some fabulous houses and building up stock to sell over the next few months. It seems like it's been a good start for that. What about you? Have you seen business performance started?
Yeah, I think the first 2 weeks, Paul from 20A, who's coming on the show soon actually, he was posting a report to show that the first 8 days of January were better than the first 8 days of 24 and 23. So that's in terms of buyer demand. So that's positive. And he'll talk about the data when he comes on the show later in the month. But overall, I've seen, naturally you see valuations and listings start to increase, which is great. Seen probably more exchanges than potentially I would have expected in the first 2 weeks of January, which is positive. That's driven by the stamp duty. Yeah. I think we've got what I would classify as some panic offers just starting to come in from probably last weekend, but starting to see some panic offers where people are trying to keep together a chain and they're just like, we need to do this and make sure the whole chain gets this stamp duty threshold. So I would imagine that might carry on for the next kind of 10, 11, 12 days, but it's always fun when you get some panic offers coming in.
Yeah, people are still having that conversation, can we do it before the stamp duty deadline? And I think what we're going to find, I've said to the team and I said to a client yesterday as well, what we're going to find is, there's a chance that you can still do it, but if you can do it, it will be dictated by activity over the next couple of weeks, as in get your solicitor moving early, pay for your searches early, that sort of thing. Activity over the next couple of weeks and in February, because by the time we get to March, it's going to be too late to catch up and solicitors are going to be pulling the hair out. So the work that we do over the next 6 weeks will dictate whether those transactions go through before March, because by the time we get to March, it's probably going to be too late. So that's the conversation that I think estate agents should be having with clients and with the teams at the moment, because there's a real laser focus on trying to hit those deadlines. $2.5 grand, it's not a massive amount in the grand scheme of things, but as I've said to so many people, it's better in your pocket than the government's, isn't it?
Yeah, if you've got a chain of 4, you've got a first time buyer at the bottom, you might find that there's 10, 11 grand's worth of tax, maybe 12 grand's worth of tax in the chain that could be saved, and that's our job as agents to try and navigate that and try and support that chain to try and make sure that the public aren't paying extra money. Effectively, is the way I see it. That 2.5 grand can go towards a nice dining table and a sofa or something like that, which you'd rather have in their house than in the government's pocket. So yeah, I think I'm excited for what we're going to do this week, though, with the podcast, because some of the feedback that me and you have had is that people have really enjoyed the Wednesday, and it's a midweek, and it's quite a nice way for them to set up the week, and they kind of look forward to the next one to get some new ideas and some fresh sort of outlook on things, a different perspective, if you like. So we thought, as it's the start of the year, why wait a week if we could just give everyone a little bite-sized episode every single day leading up to next Wednesday? So that's what we've done. We've got 7 hot topics. Won't give the game away on all of them today, but we will obviously share the first and the second. And then we'll do a kind of a shorter podcast each day, including today, so the people have got a little bit of something extra that they can get a bit of fire in their belly to start the day off with, and hopefully help them throughout the month as well with a bit more perspective, outlook, thought, advice, tips, effectively. So that's our crazy idea of the day, Mark. What do you
Yeah, we're going to mix it up. So these podcasts should hopefully be sort of between 5 and 10 minutes. It might work as you're nipping between viewings or something like that, but just really actionable pieces of advice that people can take today and run with, straight away. So shall we kick off with our first advice around communication, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, communication has been the number one complaint in a state agency for double decades now. If you talk to the PRS or if you talk to the Ombudsman, they will always say that communication is the number one thing that they receive complaints on. So we've got to start with that one, because if we can mitigate those complaints, if we can try and support people to think how they could communicate better as a business or as an individual, then that's the holy grail of agency, isn't it, really? So why not start there?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're exactly right. When people complain about estate agents, they are complaining about communication, normally lack of communication. So I think that's a big thing that we should be looking at. And it goes right through every part of the business. How can you communicate not only more, but also more efficiently to allow you the time? Because some people will want a phone call. Some people will be happy with a text message. But one thing that we certainly should try and do, and I know it's been said many times, is try and stop hiding behind email where you can, and try and have personal phone calls for those people that need that, and send text messages for the people that don't. That efficiency with communication is really important, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we don't create the rule book on this. I think if we gave the expectations of what almost our service level agreement is going to be on communication, we would help ourselves. And I think because we want to please everyone, we often say, well, look, we'll get back to you as quickly as we can or as soon as possible. And that doesn't really give any sort of tangible expectation of what that means. For example, me trading as an agent, if it was a viewing inquiry on a property that I've got an open house on 10 days time, and I'm looking to qualify those buyers, and I'm out all day today, and I've got 15 viewing inquiries that come in on that, but I've got my diary space allocated to speak to those buyers between 11 and 12 tomorrow. All I need to do is say to those buyers, there's an open house booked in 2 Saturdays' time. The time slot's going to start at 11. It's going to finish at 3. And I'm going to speak to everyone tomorrow late morning into lunchtime to qualify and confirm what time you can go. So don't worry, no one's seen it before you, but I can't speak to you today. If I've just got that as an automated little WhatsApp message, I just ping that to all 15 inquiries. There's no complaints, there's no problems, everyone knows where we stand. I just use that as a small example of how I used to work. And that meant that I'm actually not speaking to those viewing inquiries, sometimes for 36 hours, but they're okay because they know what's going on.
It's setting expectation, isn't it? And that you're exactly right. When someone's as soon as possible, they might put the phone down and be expecting the phone to ring, again in 2 minutes' time. So suddenly that next hour that you quite rightly might be out of the office at a viewing, there's no chance you can ring someone back in that time. That hour feels like a lifetime in their shoes because they're really excited. We work in an emotional game. So setting expectations on communication throughout the business is so important. And I think probably, as you alluded to, probably underutilized by agents as well.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's not like for a seller, for example, that's found a property and they're absolutely desperate to get their property under offer so they don't lose their dream home. A 36-hour expectation for them is not acceptable.
Yes.
They're our paying client. So that's going to be a simple case of maybe a quick voice note in the car between appointments, just to say, I'm out for the next 2.5 hours. You're my first call as soon as I finish that valuation. I just can't speak well and with a client. Again, it's just setting the expectation so people know when we're able to give them the time effectively. I think that would help the whole industry if we just set the expectations, and we can do that from the living room. We can do that on the valuation, by being honest with people and saying, look, these are kind of the expectations that we have to work towards to make sure that how often we can get back to you, rather than it'll be as soon as possible, because it's never as soon as possible, is it? It's the honest.
And everyone's as soon as possible is different as well. So that, and I think the big complaint side of it that you talk about is probably for clients, that are on the market, not getting enough communication, or going through a sale and the agent isn't communicating sufficiently with them. Normally, those complaints to the PRS are probably through poor communication throughout actually the sales progression process. And again, that can be solved by communicating effectively what they should expect, and communicating effectively in a user method of communication that is suitable for that situation. Now, in the early days of sales progression, maybe an email will be sufficient, but a lot of people, as the emotion and the stress of a transaction increases, will want to speak to somebody because they need that. So you have to be able to recognize those clients and use your time efficiently to send emails, WhatsApps and what have you, but also pick the phone up and certainly not hide behind emails when somebody is a little bit upset.
Yeah, I think fear plays a big part in the communication potential issue that maybe a business has. I think sometimes communication is a bit more of a problem for estate agency businesses. I know that where I was previously employed operating a traditional agent with, sort of 9-10 branches, that was the common complaint. But since the self-employed scenario, I might have had 1 or 2 complaints in sort of 5 years that I've seen come in relating to communication, and it was more when the market was absolutely mental and it was buyers that were panicking that they weren't going to be able to see a property rather than a seller or a landlord. But I think it's often that way. But fear is a big part of it, and as we sort of talk about the after-sales element of things, again, the expectation at the beginning, I see it with self-employed agents, that the ones that set the expectations correctly on after sales can spend sort of 10 or 15% of their week doing after sales, and the ones that don't end up spending 60 or 70% of their week doing after sales. I don't believe that after sales is the big time sap that the industry often thinks. I definitely don't think it needs to be outsourced. I'm a big fan of doing it yourself because that keeps the communication channel going all the way through. But what you do need to do is you need to have the expectations right. And when I had kind of 14 to 16 properties in my personal pipeline and another 6 or 7 on the market, after sales was like 10% of my week. But that's because there's actually only so much I can do as an agent. We actually get a bit caught up almost egotistically and importance levels. There's not a lot we can do in the after sales. We're sharing communication. We can't exchange it ourselves. So what do you want to do with it? Just set the expectations.
On that, and we're going to have to go on to the next point very, very quickly. But on that, I think you're absolutely right. And part of that expectation is telling clients that, we're here to assist. We can't do the do, because I think a lot of the time clients think that solicitors will charge them every time they speak to them, or they just won't ring the back. So we then end up effectively being counsellor in that scenario. It becomes very time consuming and can mean that, your communication levels with one client are massive when actually you can't really achieve a great deal for them. And it needs to be the solicitor that needs to do that. So if you make that clear right from the outset, this is our role in this process now, then not only are you going to save yourself time, but also you're going to avoid those complaints, because they will be able, you'll have communicated simply what you can do in the transaction. Because a lot of the time, as you say, when you get to that stage, it's not the agent's fault that the sale falls down. It comes down to, other parties not doing their job properly. So you need to be able to communicate that effectively. So I think that's really good advice.
Yeah. I was explaining what the chain is to our marketing team the other day, because we've got some young people in our marketing team that are going through an apprenticeship model, and they sort of said, well, what is the chain? So I was trying to explain it, and I was just highlighting the fact that once it gets past like 3 links, for every link, there's a 10 to 15% bigger chance that it will fall through. And they were like, why? And I was just because there's extra people in the chain, so there's extra problems that can happen. But we can mitigate that if we keep everything collective in the communication and expectation, but we can't influence it. That's the big thing. So again, it's those expectations. What about the different ways to communicate though? You said hiding behind email. I'm obviously a big fan of WhatsApp. I think that's something that a little project for people listening to think about is if you just took your sellers from the beginning, so anyone that you've valued all the way through to stuff that's in your pipeline, and just look at all the different touch points that you may need to speak to them. So with valuations, it's valuation, post-valuation, follow-up, etc. That's it. And then if we go into sellers, it's listing, expectation on feedback, why you've not had viewings, when you've got viewings, feedback on viewings, offers, etc. You just look at all those different touch points. What is right to phone call? What is right to email? What is right to WhatsApp? And almost have your own service level agreement in your own head of, okay, I WhatsApp this part of the communication, I email that part of the communication, I phone call that part of the communication. And think about that from an expectation point as well. That'd be very different for every agent up and down the country. Mine will be heavy WhatsApp, not a lot of email at all, and a phone call for negotiation is pretty much where that kicks in. A phone call for a problem in the after sales. Outside of that, most of it's WhatsApp. The only time I really get into email is documentation that needs to be sent for the listing and forwarding on an email from a solicitor or something of that nature in the after sales. Outside of that, I'd say I'm 3 or 4% email, probably 75% WhatsApp, and the rest phone call is pretty much how I work as an agent. So it's just worth thinking about as well.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think one of the important things, the best things that you can do within that is ask the client as well and be prepared to be flexible. So you might have a client who comes to you who doesn't particularly like using WhatsApp. So you then have to decide, can I work this way? And, you don't know that unless you've asked the question. So they might get a WhatsApp from you and get annoyed every time you WhatsApp them. Suddenly that relationship and that communication is going to be much more difficult. So yeah, ask the clients and be prepared to be flexible. But it's a very good final piece of advice to say, understand where you as an agent prefer to communicate and explain that to clients and why that works. So shall we talk and introduce what we're going to be talking about, what effectively will be tomorrow now?
Yeah, let's do it. So I think we said KPIs was going to be something to really think about. And I think it's topical at the start of the year. Hopefully everyone's got their budgeting done for 2025. They've got their 2024 P&L sheets ready. So KPIs is a really, really important kind of subject for everyone. And that's going to be tomorrow's episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will. I'm not going to do my outro for every single episode this week, but just really, really quickly on this. You know why we do it, but we're mixing it up. Please reach out and let us know what you thought about the shorter episodes this week. It would be really appreciated. Thanks very much for listening.